This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. City crews have begun cleaning up after the snowstorm that hit our province overnight. And while Winnipeg is no stranger to snow and what it takes to clear it, for years the city has under-budgeted for the costs of snow and ice removal. As CBC's Cameron McLean reports, this year's budget could finally change that.
The storm is over and the plows are out.
We've got truck plows out, we've got graders out. Everyone's working on the P1s and P2 priority 1s and priority 2 roads, the sidewalks and the active transportation network.
The mild weather this winter has meant lower than average snowfall in Winnipeg. Despite that, the city's snow clearing operations still went over budget last year. The 2023 budget included more than $36 million for snow and ice removal. But final costs added up to $40.5 million, more than $4 million over budget. That follows a pattern. Every year for the past decade, the city's snow clearing costs have exceeded the budget. Council based its budget assuming a lower than average snowfall amount.
The goal is to budget so that we don't have to, at the end of the year, look to other sources to drain our rainy day fund to cover the snow removal.
Whenever costs went over budget, the city would draw on its rainy day fund to cover the excess. But the COVID-19 pandemic and a massive snow season in 2021 and 2022 drained the fund. Now the city is considering changing the way it budgets for snow removal to assume an average amount of snow.
The reason for budgeting for the lower snowfall was in hopes that it wouldn't snow, but of course it's just always shortage of funding.
This Friday, the Public Works Committee will consider a proposal to change the way that it budgets for snow removal, assuming an average snowfall scenario rather than a low one. This would boost the snow clearing budget to $54.2 million. We asked Winnipeggers whether they thought the city should budget more for snow removal.
I would hope so, because it's really important for everyone to get to where they need to go, safe and sound.
Allocating a little bit more money to a sudden or a quicker response might be a better idea than kind of just staying on the routine.
If council approves the changes, the snow clearing budget would rise by about $3 million each year, reaching $54 million by 2027. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Our weather specialist Riley Lachuk joins us. Now, just how much snow did we receive?
Well, Janet, Winnipeg receiving about 5 to 7 centimeters, maybe locally some higher amounts in your backyard, but that's kind of the average for last night and early this morning. West, Brandon, Portage la Prairie, about 4 to 5 centimeters. Swan River, 9 centimeters. That is as of this morning, though, and of course it has been snowing still in parts of Westman, so this number will change as we get into the day tomorrow. Woodlands, just north of the city, seeing 10 centimeters, and we're still seeing some of that snow make its way through the Dauphin region, the Lake Manitoba Narrows, into the northern Interlake. So we're looking at snow continuing through parts of central Manitoba. Could see a few flurries tonight in the Winnipeg region, but the story tonight is really going to be the winds. For that, we have a blowing snow advisory for Winnipeg and the Red River Valley. Could see wind gusts up to 70 or 80 kilometers an hour, so that could make highway travel quite treacherous overnight tonight into the early morning hours. So it's not going to be so much the snow here in the Red River Valley, but a lot more of the wind. And of course, the colder temperatures waking up tomorrow around -20 in southern Manitoba and even closer to -30 in the north. Janet will break this all down for you when I come back in just a few minutes.
Thank you very much, Riley.
You're welcome.
A growing number of asylum seekers arriving in Manitoba is driving up demand for services to help them. Many refugee claimants have to go to the shelter system for a place to stay when they get here. But now there's a push for more support, including a dedicated shelter. CBC's Josh Crabb reports.
Members of Manitoba's Congolese community marched on Saturday in Winnipeg to raise awareness about a decades-long war. Millions of people have been killed or displaced in fighting in the eastern region of the Democratic Republic of Congo, a situation community advocate Paul Kambaja says is driving some people to Canada.
They are scared because, they don't know how Canada works.
Many are ending up here, at the Salvation Army's Centre of Hope and at other homeless shelters after crossing into Canada to try and make an asylum claim. The centre's executive director, Mark Stewart, says there are more refugee claimants in need of shelter.
It's huge. So we've actually opened an estimated 60 brand new bed spaces for refugee claimants. We do know that working with the other shelters that they were seeing increases as well.
185 asylum claimants were processed by Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada and Canada Border Services Agency last month. In September 2023, there were 65, but the number started rising in October. That month, 130 claims were processed, then 145 in November and 125 in December. With situations like the one in Congo and other conflicts, Emily Halderson with the Manitoba Association of Newcomer Serving Organizations says more money is needed for agencies in Manitoba who work with refugee claimants so they can support them. She says they need legal support and somewhere to live while waiting for their claims to be processed.
They do need to stay in some form of temporary accommodation, and that has fallen to the shelter system to deal with that.
3 times a week, the Centre of Hope connects refugee claimants with newcomer groups. Halderson applauds the move, but says temporary accommodations specifically for refugee claimants are needed. She says a proposal was submitted to the Manitoba government and they're just waiting to hear back. Kambaja says with fighting continuing in his home country, people who come here need help.
One youth in my community said, "My dad has never seen Congo in peace. He's not alone. It's all of us."
He hopes both the federal and provincial governments will find new ways to help the influx of refugee claimants. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A 26-year-old man is dead. He was found in Winnipeg's Daniel McIntyre neighborhood last night. Police say they were called there by a report of an injured man near Maryland Street and Wellington Avenue before midnight. They took the man to hospital in critical condition, but he later died. He has been identified as Kevin Delaney Flett, a member of St. Teresa Point First Nation. People living near the former Vulcan Ironworks building on Sutherland say they're sick and tired of that property catching fire over and over again. Crews were out this weekend fighting a fire at the old Winnipeg industrial site. It was just the latest of several blazes inside the property since a major fire completely gutted it last summer. The property's owner has told CBC he didn't have insurance and that he cannot afford the extra cost to clean up the asbestos at the site. In the meantime, people who live nearby are fed up.
We're all really had enough. And we don't understand why the province and the city don't put their big person panties on and clean that up. Because if they don't, this is going to keep on happening. So we're fed up. We're fed up with the smoke. We're fed up with the fire engines coming and going. We're fed up with worrying about the businesses and the houses that are nearby, the poisons that go into the air. There's children live here, not to mention old folks like me who might have respiratory issues. So yeah, we're pretty darn fed up.
A separate fire ripped through a building this morning on Spence Street, south of Broadway. Fire crews were called just after midnight about a burning vacant house. The city says this multi-family home is a total loss. An emergency demolition has been ordered. No injuries were reported. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. A Brandon landlord says her tenant caused thousands of dollars in damages to her property and took months to evict. She is now calling for better protections for those who rent out their properties. Chelsea Kemp has the story.
You just have to be careful stepping on that mess because you don't know if there's needles under it or what's under it.
The smell of dirty adult diapers and stale cigarette butts fills the air. Graffiti covers the walls. There's holes in the roof, and the back door blocked with a heavy 2x4. This is what landlord Shirley Harkness found after evicting a former tenant. Harkness says she spent 3 months trying to get her property back.
It's the red tape and the laws. The laws need to be changed so that they're in favor of the landlords, not in favor of the tenant. Because if you get a bad tenant or a drug dealer, well, you might as well just walk away.
Harkness documented extensive damage and at least 10 police calls at her property. She says it was hard getting the Brandon residential tenancy branch to help her. The province wouldn't confirm if the Brandon office is fully staffed, but there are 2 full-time workers available.
Tenancy board does nothing for you. Like, it shouldn't be the way it is. It shouldn't be that a tenant has more rights in somebody's house than the owner of the house. We're the ones paying the taxes.
Avram Shirak is with the Professional Property Managers Association. He says it's possible to get an eviction due to damages, safety risk, or disturbances, but it's really hard to prove. He says the best bet that landlords have is a vigorous pre-screening process for any potential renters.
The jeopardy is huge for an honest landlord who ends up with a dishonest tenant, because one bad tenant not paying 1 month's rent could wipe out the profit of the property for years.
Harkness wants to start renting her property again, but can't because of the damage. She's now looking at small claims court to try and get the tenant to help pay for repairs. Chelsea Kemp, CBC News, Brandon.
A judge has ordered a mental health assessment for a man accused of killing 5 people in southern Manitoba earlier this month. CBC's Bryce Hoy has more.
Ryan Manikisak had his hands behind his back in cuffs today as he appeared in a Winnipeg courtroom via video conference. The 29-year-old sat silent during the brief hearing as his lawyer asked the judge to approve an assessment to determine whether or not he's fit to stand trial. Manikisak is charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder in the death of his common-law partner, 30-year-old Amanda Clearwater, their 3 children, 6-year-old Bethany, 4-year-old Javen, and 2-month-old Isabella, and Clearwater's cousin, 17-year-old Maya Grattan. All were found dead in and around Carman on February 11th. Today, one of Manikisak's lawyers requested an assessment that could be used to argue whether he's fit to stand trial. His lawyer, Morgan Lawrence, said that the defense team has developed concerns about Manikisak in the past 2 weeks, though she wouldn't reveal more. Provincial Court Judge Donald Slout granted the request. Now, we know that Manikisak has a history of addictions and mental health issues like depression and anxiety. That much came out in court in 2019 when he was convicted of mischief. Now, the assessment ordered today is expected to take place in the next few weeks. Bryce Hoy, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A 10-year-old boy from Winkler, who's already had more than 35 surgeries, is giving back through his donation to HSC Children's Hospital. CBC's Zubina Ahmed brings us his story.
This 10-year-old from Winkler is making a difference. He presented 2 checks totaling $34,000 to HSC Children's Hospital. Pacey Wall was chosen Manitoba's champion child in 2023.
I remember when my parents told me that my goal was to raise $10,000 in 2023. I looked at them and said, I'll raise 30 grand. They told me, be realistic. Apparently I was being realistic.
Wall lives with intestinal failure and has had 35 surgeries at the HSC Children's Hospital. He's thankful to the hospital's healthcare team for taking care of him. That's why he made it his goal to support other kids who need the same care as him.
I will never forget everything that they have done for me to give me a better quality of life. I know I will continue to need them until I become a grown-up, and I really, really hope that they can see that I am thankful for everything they do for me.
Wall says he raised much of the money going door-to-door selling pizza. His biggest fundraiser was a raffle during a Winkler Flyers hockey game, where he made over $13,000 in one night.
I don't really like my parents helping me much because I think it means more if I do it myself. So I got them to drive me around to businesses in Winkler and Morden that I picked, and I asked to speak to the managers to see if they would be willing to donate raffle prizes. Let me tell you, I had a lot of business meetings.
President of Children's Hospital Foundation of Manitoba, Stefano Grande, says Wall inspires him every single day.
You've done so much for our foundation. You've done so much for A lot of kids who you represent. Over 130, 140,000 kids per year that come to our hospital. Kids like you who just need a little bit of help, and you were an incredible voice.
WAR's donation is split in half for both the HSC Children's Hospital and Children's Hospital Research Institute of Manitoba. It will be used to purchase special equipment for the pediatric surgical department, and on the research side, the money will go towards emergency care. Zabina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Hundreds of people packed an auditorium at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights over the weekend to mark 2 years since the start of the war in Ukraine. More than 200,000 Ukrainians have made their way to Canada since the war began. Manitoba has welcomed about 25,000 of them, some of whom showed up at the rally.
Hey, 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 hey.
It's very hard. The previous 2 days, I was crying so much. So every day starts with some news, which are every day the news are horrible, and doesn't stop, and you're suffering about it so much. We tried to stay in Ukraine to live for the first year, and realized that our 3 kids, there is not opportunity to take education, to have some hobbies, because every day the missiles, every day killed kids on the shelters, every day something happened. So we decided to give our kids normal future. So that's our choice. I'm happy that Ukrainians in every part of the earth, they are united. They are fighting, they do everything possible. The main thing I want to say that I really want to thank you Canadians for the real support and for the great supports, because we, like a refugee, have felt it so much. So thank you very much.
Riley Lechuk joining us once more, really messy this morning.
Yeah, really messy morning in parts of the province, Janet, and we're looking at some visibility concerns as we get into the overnight period into the morning. We'll talk about that in a minute. First, speaking of messy, I want to show you a video. This coming to us from the Swan River area. Lisa posting this on Facebook and letting us show it to you tonight of her family trying to get out this morning. This was in the Swan River area where the snow and the wind really started to move in before midnight tonight. Look at those snow drifts. They are quite something thanks to the wind in the Swan River area. We did see another push of snow move in to the region through the later part of the afternoon, and that's still kind of pushing its way through the Dauphin region right now. But just to give you a sense of some of that snow that moved through, looking at temperatures right now, and I did warn you that behind that was some very cold Arctic air, minus 17s, minus 18s in Swan River right now, and you can see that line where this warmer air is starting to push south and this colder air pushing further into the Red River Valley. So -6 in Winnipeg, we got up to +2 this morning, and the temperature has been steadily falling since, and we're going to look at temperatures continuing to fall as we get into the night tonight, into extreme cold territory through the far northern part of Manitoba as temperatures approach -30. Really not doing much better than -16 tomorrow in the Winnipeg region. So yeah, there's that snow I was talking about moving its way through the western part of Manitoba. Behind that, some cloud cover, maybe a few flurries through the evening and the overnight hours through the Winnipeg region. But behind that, another area of low pressure, Colorado low here, tracking its way to the northeast, clipping the southeastern edge of Manitoba. Could give us a few snowflakes into the early part of tomorrow morning for Winnipeg, but mostly centered in that southeastern corner of Manitoba and into northwestern Ontario. Other than that, we're looking at Sunny skies as we get through the rest of Tuesday into early Wednesday, and that will allow temperatures really to cool off as we get through the next couple of days in Manitoba. In terms of snow to come, really not a lot in southern Manitoba, but northwestern Ontario looking at 10 to 15 centimeters, could even get higher amounts into the Fort Frances region. But the story in Manitoba, at least, is going to be the winds as we get into the night tonight. So forecast winds, looking at winds out of the north, 30 gusting 50, even high as 60, and as I mentioned earlier, could see some of those gusts even at 70 or 80 kilometers an hour through southern Manitoba before they start to let up a little bit by the time we get to the supper hour on Tuesday. -6 right now. Pressure is rising. North winds at about 30 sustained right now. Overnight tonight around -17 with that snow and that blowing snow. -16 first thing in the morning and into the afternoon. Really not getting any warmer than that with that blowing snow continuing. And we'll see the sun a little bit more as we get into Wednesday, a high of -19 degrees. And Janet, we have a little bit of a reprieve coming if you don't like the colder temperatures, -3s and -2s to round out the week.
Thanks very much, Riley.
You're welcome.
Check in with you a little later. Well, it certainly was an emotional goodbye for Olympic curler and Winnipegger, former Winnipegger, Jennifer Jones last night. The 49-year-old is retiring from women's curling. She played her last game in the Scotties Tournament of Hearts final in Calgary yesterday. Her team lost 5-4 to Rachel Homan of Ontario. Here's some of what Jennifer Jones told CBC News Network this morning.
I really wished I could have made my last shot at the Scotties. It was really close. It was a hard shot, but all in all, it was just a fabulous week and really a dream week for us. We couldn't have asked for it to go any better. Maybe one more shot here or there in the final, but it really was a fairy tale. I really thought it might get by, and then we had a great shot, but when it hit, it was really, I don't know, it could feel, your heart sink a little bit. And it's like, it's over. Like, this is what I've done for what feels like my entire life. And in one moment it's done. And I was just so proud of our week though. Like, I always said no regrets. And honestly, I haven't felt too sad about the outcome. I'm sad to leave curling. I'm sad to say goodbye, but I really am proud of our week and how we performed. And it just wasn't meant to be. And Team Holland just played outstanding. They were going to be tough to beat, and they deserved to win that game. And then all of a sudden the crowd just stood up and just kept clapping. And it was really super overwhelmingly emotional for me. I couldn't believe that this was happening. To just have such a farewell was more than I could have ever expected or imagined. And I was super grateful for the fans and to be able to say goodbye in that way.
Here she comes.
Punjabi music superstar Diljit Dosanjh is coming to Winnipeg. He's bringing his Dil Luminati tour to the Canada Life Centre on May 3rd, the second stop on his North American tour, which comes after his show at BC Place in Vancouver, which is expected to be the largest Punjabi performance outside of India ever. Tickets go on sale March 1st at 10 a.m. with pre-sales starting this Thursday. Stay with us. Your national and international headlines are next. The federal government has introduced a new bill to tackle online abuse. The legislation is meant to protect children from bullying, exploitation, hatred, and violence on the internet. CBC's Refugee has the details.
The Liberals are clearly hoping to make a statement with this legislation. They had been telegraphing last week, as Parliament was on an off week, that it would be the first piece they presented upon their return, and that's what's now happened. The legislation does propose a lot, chiefly in the goal of reducing harmful content to Canadian internet users, specifically children, minors. And it defines harmful content in 7 different categories. Some of those do focus on children, such as content that sexually victimizes a child. But their categories are broader. Some of them include content that foments hatred. And to enforce all this, the government would create a new regulator, the Digital Safety Commission, think like the CRTC, but for the internet, when it comes to 2 specific categories, content that sexually victimizes a child or intimate content that's shared without someone's consent, the commission would actually have the ability to go to online platforms and tell them you need to take this down within 24 hours.
We have rigorous safety standards for things like my son's Lego at home. Yet somehow none for the most dangerous toy, not just in my home, but every Canadian home, the screen that is in front of our children's faces.
This is not the government's first try at acting either. It initially proposed similar legislation before the last election, then promised it would reintroduce it during the campaign, but it took several rounds of consultations with community groups, with experts to get to this point, the NDP pointing to that delay.
They finally announced steps to move forward on online harm. They promised to do so 100 days after the election. Now we're at almost 800 days. Their inaction has meant that kids were harmed, that kids actually were exploited.
The Conservatives, meanwhile, have already said they look at this legislation as Justin Trudeau's latest attack on freedom of expression, and they plan to fight its passing. Refugee on CBC News, Ottawa.
4 months after a Northern Ontario man with a troubled past shot and killed 4 people, including his 3 children, there are calls for police to be more proactive in dealing with domestic violence. Katie Nicholson has more.
So when I got married, there was 4. Was there a chance that things could have been handled different?
Angie Sweeney's friends spend a lot of time wondering what could have saved her life.
The cops know his history, right? We might not all know it, but the cops know the type of person they're dealing with.
Sweeney was shot by Bobby Howlert on October 23rd, just days after breaking up with him. Howlert then drove to his second home and shot another ex-partner, killed his 3 children, and then turned the gun on himself. The day before her murder, Sweeney called police to make him leave her property. Police say they had no grounds to make an arrest or hold him. But Howlert had a record of assaulting police officers and a history of intimate partner violence. Amanda Bjorna wonders if it would have made a difference if police were allowed to share that information with Sweeney.
If they came and they said, listen, we're a little bit concerned because this man has such a violent history, like we're concerned for you too at this point, we need you to get to safety. It might snap a little bit more in that woman's mind, right?
The Ontario government says it's looking at legislation that would allow police to disclose someone's history of domestic violence to current partners, something known as Clare's Law, which has been brought in 4 other provinces. Until that happens, the Sault Ste. Marie police chief is looking for a workaround.
We need to think outside the criminal code and use more intuitive, proactive approaches to say, what can we do for this victim?
His force is looking at whether officers could connect women at addresses where there have been a number of domestic-type calls with victim services resources, even if no charges were laid.
It may, in fact, be you need a safety plan and you need to get to a shelter. We suggest you do it now. We'll help you do that. Would it have helped in this situation? I don't know. My gut is it would.
Hoping to push for even more change, Sweeney's friends and family formally requested an inquest on Friday. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Sault Ste. Marie.
That law that allows police to share information, Clare's Law, Manitoba did pass a bill similar to Clare's Law back in 2022. It's not yet in effect. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in Poland following a weekend visit to Ukraine. He's meeting with Polish officials to discuss ongoing support for Ukraine in its war with Russia. Trudeau's also defending Canada's military spending and support for NATO. CBC's Evan Dyer has the latest.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau met with both Poland's Prime Minister and its President today, political foes on many issues, but united on one, determination to resist Russian aggression, whether against Ukraine or against their own country. Within the next couple of years or even months, we have to reach defense capacities regarding production of all kinds of weapons that will really exceed the Russian capacities. Otherwise, Europe will be subject to Russian aggression. Poland is arming itself at a faster rate than any other country in NATO. It spends over 4% of its GDP on defense, about 3 times the proportion of Canada. And its defense minister has said that if Poland feels the Russian threat is getting worse, it's ready to double that number.
Since we took office in 2015, we've made commitments to increase our defense spending by 70%.
But Canada is still only at about 1.3% of GDP. It's tried to make up for that by focusing on the kind of spending allies notice.
We continue to support and appreciate the many additional commitments to defense and defense spending and defense preparedness that Canada has made.
But Cohen says those projects don't make up for the underlying issue. Canada spends less than its major allies.
I don't think Canada has any interest in being that kind of an outlier in NATO.
But the pressure on Trudeau is coming from allies, not from the opposition at home. The opposition leader's office says a future Poilievre government will work towards meeting Canada's NATO spending commitment of 2% of its GDP. Working towards 2% is very similar to the language the Trudeau government uses to assuage its allies. But those allies, especially here in the eastern part of NATO, increasingly want to see more than working towards. They want to know exactly when Canada is going to get there. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Warsaw.
About 160 tons of Ukrainian grain have been destroyed at a railway station in Poland. Farmers in Poland have been protesting what they see as unfair competition from Ukrainian produce. The destruction of the grain is the fourth such incident in recent weeks. Ukraine is calling for those involved to be punished. Polish farmers have complained about surpluses caused by cheap imports. The EU waived duties on Ukrainian food imports following Russia's invasion in 2022. Protesting farmers in Poland and in other European countries have been blocking border crossings and highways to complain. They're upset with foreign competition, environmental regulations, high costs, and low prices for their produce. A passenger who lost his phone during a flight thought he'd get it back. After all, it had been found and turned in by an Air Canada employee. But he still hadn't gotten his phone back. Air Canada says it doesn't have to compensate him. So what's going on? The story after the break. Air Canada has decided it does not have to compensate a passenger for a cell phone it appears to have lost. The passenger misplaced the phone, but it was found and turned in to the airline by an Air Canada employee. Carolyn Dunn with CBC's Go Public unit picks up the story.
I was hoping that my mobile tracker would save me by finding my device.
Olu Awase was trying every trick he knew to help find his lost phone. Last October, the Edmonton man accidentally dropped his 3-month-old pricey Samsung phone before his family boarded a flight from Toronto to Edmonton. Once home, Awase opened a security app called Bitdefender. It alerted him that someone had tried to unlock his phone, and to his surprise, an Air Canada employee in full uniform was staring back at him. Were obscuring his identity. At first, Awase was relieved.
I think I'm in good hands. If it's an employee of an Air Canada that found it, then I'm okay.
Air Canada emailed him to say it had identified the individual in the picture you provided and conducted an interview with them. And the employee and an eyewitness reported the phone was returned to the lost and found area, specifically at the Air Canada customer service desk. After that, the airline lost track of the phone, and that email would be the last time Air Canada would correspond with Awase. After weeks of online chats and emails with the airline, Awase is no closer to getting his phone back.
So that made me believe this was a case of a theft.
In a statement to Go Public, the airline said Air Canada did not have responsibility for this phone, as it is a personal item.
Finders, keepers, losers, weepers. That's not an accurate summation of the law.
But this civil lawyer says Air Canada is likely liable.
When someone comes into possession of someone else's property and that person's identification is known, they do have obligations to return that property.
Olu Awase is not giving up. He's lodged a police complaint and hired a lawyer, hoping Air Canada will pony up the approximately $2,000 he owes on his lost phone's contract. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Calgary.
Riley Lachuk joins us once again, looking up north now, where I guess it's still extremely cold.
Yeah, we're looking at cold conditions really across southern Manitoba, Janet, and northern Manitoba. Doesn't mean it's not going to be cold everywhere, but cold enough in parts of the north for an extreme cold warning, which we'll show you now. This takes us out into Wednesday morning. We could see intermittent wind chill values as cold as -45 on exposed skin for this shaded area in purple, including the Tadoule Lake region toward Lac Brochet and skirting along this part of northern Manitoba, just about to Lynn Lake as well. So this is frostbite on exposed skin in just minutes, so keep that in mind. We also have a snowfall warning in place for northwestern Ontario. Kenora itself, not in this, but Fort Frances, Atikokan, Dryden, points to the north and east under the snowfall warning. Could see up to 25 centimeters of snow, especially in this Dryden-Fort Frances corridor by the time we get to the night tomorrow. So I'll show you that in just a moment. Looking at temperatures, -6 in Winnipeg, far cry from the +2 earlier this morning, -10 in St. Laurent, -10 as well in Eli, and colder conditions to the west, -17s for both Dauphin and Roblin, -18 in Swan River, and the north is where we're seeing some of the coldest conditions, -18s for the Paw and Norway House, but approaching -30 for both Tadoule Lake and Churchill. So looking at tonight's forecast, we're expecting that snow to start to move into northwestern Ontario tonight. Light snow beginning through Kenora, Red Lake, as well as Dryden and Fort Frances. Lows tonight around -15 degrees with that falling temperature. Maybe another couple centimeters through the Gimli and the Winnipeg regions, more like 2 to 4, potentially through Emerson and Steinbach. This would be through the early morning hours through the Pinawa-Sprague region. But the story, as I mentioned, definitely going to be the winds as we get into the next day or so here in southern Manitoba. Snow ends in Swan River, maybe a couple centimeters yet to come in the Dauphin region with blowing snow through the western part of the province as well, -19s in Melita and Brandon, and this is the region we have the extreme cold warning in, -32 tonight in both Lynn Lake and Thompson, -29 in Churchill, and -31 in Gillam. Sunshine tomorrow, but cold conditions. Temperatures around -20 through much of northern Manitoba. Through the southwest, we're looking at temperatures around -15, -16 through the southwest corner of the province, -17 through Swan River and Dauphin. And this is the region here, south central Manitoba, where we could see, especially through the early morning hours, wind gusts up to 70 kilometers an hour, prompting that blowing snow advisory. Same thing for the Gimli region down through Emerson. Slim chance of some morning flurries, but 5 to 10 centimeters of snow in Sprague at -13 tomorrow afternoon. And the snow event through northwestern Ontario, up to 25 potentially through the Dryden region at -12, -14 in Kenora with about 5 to 10 centimeters coming tomorrow. Janet, I'll have your 7-day coming up.
Thank you very much, Riley.
You're welcome.
They are members of a Russian feminist rock band, internationally notorious and repeatedly jailed for protesting Vladimir Putin and his policies. Pussy Riot is on a Canadian tour. Coming up, we talk to members of the band and hear what it's like to be persecuted for your beliefs and your music. Feminist rock band Pussy Riot now lives in exile from Russia. The members are bringing their message of rebellion on a tour through Canada to support Ukraine. They'll play Winnipeg's Park Theatre March 10th. CBC's Jim Agapito spoke with them ahead of their show and asked their thoughts on the death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who was a big supporter of the band.
Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny was a friend of the band, and I've got to ask, what impact has his death had on the band?
I think Alexei Navalny was not just a friend. And sometimes you can feel it only after the loss. He was one of the first people who went to support us back in 2012. He was protesting in the front of the prison where we've been with Nadia. He was not just a super bright politician who has this amazing gift to speak with completely different people and be heard, but also a person who cared on just problems of completely different also people. And he helped so many activists.
Yeah, I think one of the really important stuff that's actually Alexei Navalny was those persons who inspire more young generation to be more political, like really be in it, try to do something, go to vote, go to the street, use all the tools to be against the Putin's regimes. Because yeah, he was so inspired and he can find the language to speak like with a lot of different community.
Yeah.
I think I would like to add that he really believed that our country have a different future and we can be different country. And he really inspired all the people, as Diana said, to believe in this and fight for it.
I want to ask, because I know both Olga and Masha, you guys are living in exile from Russia, you know, and what's that experience been like for both of you? I mean, you obviously protest Putin. You know, for a country you love. What's that life been like right now?
Yeah, Diana is also living now. All in this situation. I think Oля can start.
Well, for example, I left Russia 2 weeks after the beginning of the war, and basically this is when I've joined the Riot Days team, our show that we're going to perform. And since then, we've been basically almost currently on tour. And we believe that's a great opportunity for us to do something useful, which is with our concerts, raise money for Ukrainian Children's Hospital. So far, we've attracted and collected more than 100,000 euros. And I think it's important to try to do something even from the exile. Also, so many people are still in Russia, so many people are in prison, and these people need attention. And I can tell how it's important to feel the support from outside of the jail.
And Manitoba, where you are coming through for the Riot Days tour, is home to a lot of Ukrainian refugees. We have a huge population here. I've got to ask, you know, a message of resistance. What message of resistance would you give to some of them?
I would like to say, I think with our concert and in general, we want to say that we support you, and we're gonna continue to support Ukraine till its victory. And I think it became quite obvious, especially last week, that the only thing that you can do to Putin in order to win him, he needs to lose this war. And I think it's a very important point that everyone should understand. And I would say we support you, and we're going to support you till the very last day. Well, I think we're excited to come and to perform, and we want everyone to join us, and and have a great time. And we hope that we're going to inspire lots of people. And we just want everyone to join us in our fight.
March 10th at the Park Theatre, that is. Your 7-day forecast and daily lift are still to come.
Quick look at how your Tuesday plays out as we get through the overnight period tonight. We see that snow across central Manitoba tapering off, but we start the day Tuesday with this next band of precipitation clipping southeastern Manitoba. This particular model has been pushing the snow a little bit further to the south, but chance we could see some of that snow through the Winnipeg region through the early morning hours before we start to see a little bit more clearing through the day tomorrow. So your day planner looks like this. Chance of that snow and blowing snow in the morning. Gusty north winds with that blowing snow advisory as we head into the morning hours. -16 into the afternoon and warming up a little bit. So -19 for Wednesday, -3 for Thursday, -2 for Friday, Janet, and then another chance we could see a little bit more precipitation as we head into the weekend. Now, a reminder to check your attics and your basements for any treasures that might be hiding, Janet.
Remember that family in Saskatchewan who found a case of 45-year-old hockey cards? An update is tonight's Daily Lift. This is the unopened case of O-Pee-Chee brand hockey cards discovered recently by a family in Regina while a dad helped his son clean the attic. What's the big deal? This case could hold as many as 27 of these Wayne Gretzky rookie cards. Now, in mint condition, a single rookie card can sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And according to Heritage Auctions, the family almost missed that this case could be especially valuable.
Family, since they've had this for 40-some years, always assumed this was a 1980 case of hockey. Until one day, someone finally asked them, you might want to check and see what's exactly in there. So they pulled back about an inch, and to their surprise, these are all white boxes. That's when they realized this was 79.80. You know, this went from 350,000 to pushing 3 million.
And pushed 3 million. It did, in fact, 3.1 million US. That's almost 4.2 million Canadian dollars. Add fees, and it takes the cost over 5 million Canadian. Not surprisingly, the family has chosen to remain anonymous, but the auction house says they are ecstatic with their life-changing windfall.
No kidding.
No kidding.
Wow. Thank you for being with us tonight, folks. Drive safe. We said that at the same time.